Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Overtime Podcast, a Cold Front Report multicast. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Clayton Garrett. You can find me on Twitter at CFR Clayton, and joining me as always.
I am Jeff Uvino. You can find me on Twitter at JUVEINO.
And tonight we have a very special guest, a guy that I worked with on his own podcast a handful of weeks back, a guy who's going to make a special appearance on the post-game show on the Cold Front Report this week. Buffalo Rumbling's very own JSpence, the king, the host of the Code of Conduct podcast. Spence, how you doing tonight, man?
Man, I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I always love, getting together with you, and now I'm excited about my man Jeff over. We're gonna have some fun.
Oh man! Speaking of some fun, Tyler Bass was having a lot of fun this past week. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Recapping the Bills' 18-10 victory over the New York Jets, snapping a 2-game losing streak, as well as previewing the Bills' Week 8 matchup with the New England Patriots, a game in which they could clinch the AFC. Well, not technically, but theoretically clinch the AFC East, which is the first time that happened in either mine or Jeff's existence. But there was some very important news that broke earlier this afternoon. Jon Feliciano has been activated from the injured reserve list. Spence, this is a platform of hospitality. I'll give you the first bat. What are your thoughts about Jon Feliciano coming back amidst the Bills' interior offensive line struggling as of late?
Well, first, I appreciate your hospitality. Thank you. But the biggest point about this is, thank God. Can we please get Winters off the offensive line, put Feliciano there, and whatever we're doing on the other side, let's keep doing that. We looked a little bit better this week. That's fine. Let's get Winters out of here, man. Like, I'm beyond annoyed and tired of seeing Brian Winters just let people tackle my quarterback and my running backs. Beyond tired.
I'm right with you. Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. The offensive line has been a unit that hasn't been great this year, and now you're getting some relief and some help. And so hopefully that, translate to an improved running game and improved offense as a whole.
An improved running game the Bills definitely need. And also in the injury front, Levi Wallace was, I believe, removed from the injured reserve list, which means he starts practicing. Not necessarily he's going to be making his return this week against New England Patriots, but a sign of being in the correct direction. And like you guys both alluded to, this offensive line has been struggling as of late. So with that, let's start talking about the Bills' offense in this game against New York Jets. A game in which they had over 400 total yards, where Josh Allen had over 360 total yards. And really, it was a solid performance from a statistical standpoint with yardage and first downs and what have you. But the points weren't there. And we saw Tyler Bass come in. He attempted 8 field goals. He missed 2. Spence, what were your thoughts about the Bills' offense coming out of this game?
Well, coming out of the game, I'm disappointed. Not disappointed in the sense that the offense didn't look good. Josh still moved the ball. He had more than 300 yards passing in the air. The offense looked like they knew what they were doing. Cole Beasley had a great game. But, like I said to you guys before we jumped on live here, we have to score points, especially when you're going against the team that's considered the worst or the second worst team in the league. There's no excuse for you not being able to put up 2 touchdowns. I get it. They're professionals. I said it before. Like, look, you can't sleep on the Jets just because they're 0-6, because those guys are professionals too. And, all of that talk. I get it. You are supposed to score touchdowns. Not you get into the red zone that many times and you don't score a touchdown. You do that against a good team and you're not making it to the next round in the playoffs. Just period.
Right. Jeff?
Yeah, ugly win, yes, but there were positives. I wanted to compare some stats from this game to the Week 1 game against the Jets because I felt like the reaction from Bills fans and from Buffalo coming out of that Week 1 game was generally positive. You don't exactly know what to expect coming into Week 1, but it seems like after this game, the tone is much more negative from a lot of people saying that, you should have pounded the Jets. You should have, scored touchdowns, put 30 points up on them, blow them away. And while those thoughts aren't wrong, some stats to, just to think about. So Allen threw 33 for 46 for 312 yards against the Jets the first time they played them. And people said he had a great game, which I thought he played well. He had the few turnovers in that game. But regardless, in this game in Week 7, he was 30 for 43 with 307 yards. So 312 the first time, 307 this time. The Bills had 422 team offensive yards this time against the Jets. and 404 in week 1. 26 first downs in this game, 31 first downs in week 1. So these numbers are all very similar. And I think that's why coming out of this game, I don't feel bad. Now, the big glaring thing is that you didn't finish your drives. And so that doesn't reflect in the total yards on offense because you're moving the ball. And we're going to have a conversation about who we're going to blame for not being able to finish the drives, whether it's play calling, whether it's offensive execution, the run game not being good enough or whatever. But I think that Josh Allen looked adequate in this game as he did in week 1. And he has, in the 4 games that the Bills won prior to this. And that's big to me because we know how important your quarterback play is. And I think that as long as Allen is playing on par with that, then you can't really feel too bad coming out of this game. Defensive numbers in this game, the Jets had 254 yards of offense week 1, 190 this week, 202 passing yards the first time compared to 96 this week. So small improvements there as well. So I'm not really feeling too bad coming out of this game, considering what we saw in that first half.
Solid. Overall with this Bills offense, obviously they looked efficient in the passing attack. They looked very good from the 20 to the 20, I believed. When they started drives, they started them hot. They looked efficient. Josh Allen was making his reads and making plays and finding Cole Beasley. And Cole Beasley, wow, he had an incredible game. 11 catches, which was a career high, over 100 yards receiving. He didn't get in the end zone, but Cole Beasley was really the player on this offense that was making the chains move, that was moving the chains for the Bills offense. You saw him target Stephon Diggs, I believe, only 8 times for 6 receptions for under 50 yards. So a solid contributing day for Stephon Diggs, but it's obvious that he wasn't the go-to guy today. And I mean, it's fairly obvious that they were double teaming Stephon Diggs throughout this game and focusing the defensive coverage towards Stephon Diggs' side of the field. So that left Cole Beasley open with the mismatch. And with John Brown out of this game, I really feel the same way, is that this offense just really doesn't look the same without John Brown in the field. And I can't wait to get him back against the New England Patriots. That's going to be a huge key for the Bills this week. But the one concerning thing for me coming out of this game is still the inability to run the football. And there's a lot of discussion amongst Bills fans. There's a lot of discussion on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what have you, of why the Bills aren't running the ball and why they can't run the ball. And I know I have reserved thoughts of this, but Spence, what are your feelings of the Bills' rushing attack after this game?
Well, we just opened up the show talking about Feliciano being activated to the active roster now. I think a big part of the reason why our rush attack doesn't look like a rush attack is because the line that we have just hasn't been able to block. Brian Winters, dude, he consistently just literally like moves out the way and just lets people run by him to make the tackle. So while I'm not putting it all on Brian Winters or on the offensive line, I can honestly sit here and say, after watching each of the games back multiple times now, you can't expect. We could have Adrian Peterson in his prime. We could have Barry Sanders in his prime, and he would have issues because people they're on the player as soon as they touch the ball. You can't even get your first move in before you have a guy trying to tackle you.
Jeff?
I agree. I mean, how important is the offensive line play to the running game? It's everything. And you look at Devin Singletary run the ball, and a lot of times he's making cuts at the line of scrimmage. He shouldn't be having to make cuts at the line of scrimmage every time he's going to have a big run. That falls on your offensive line. And yes, Spence is right. Their offensive line is getting pushed back into the backfield. They're not getting a push. And it showed up the last few weeks on some, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 plays where the Bills need a yard and they haven't gotten it. You should be getting that quarterback sneak. You should get that yard with Allen every single time with your big quarterback if you're getting any sort of push from your offensive line. And so I think that the running game improves when the offensive line play improves, and Feliciano coming back this week could be what they need to do that.
Okay, so I believe there's 2 factors. He goes, here we go. Yeah, here we go. So there's really 2 factors to this, in my opinion. And like both of you mentioned, the atrocious play along the interior is obviously a huge factor into why the Bills' running game has been so inept through the course of really the last 3 weeks. I understand it hasn't been a focal point of the offense through the entirety of the season to this point, but it's been really, really bad these last 3 weeks, to the point where the Bills can't really establish play action and use that facet of their offense, a facet in which Josh Allen is one of the best in the league. But I also feel like rhythm of play calling has a lot to do with it, because I watched a play this week where Henry Anderson slants into the gap and he bench presses Ike Butker off. Yes, I called him Butker because that man is ass. He bench pressed Ike Butker right off of him, and he makes the play 3 yards in the backfield. And might I mind you, this is coming off of 2 consecutive rushing plays prior to that play. So I feel like the defense kind of felt like they knew that was coming. And my main issue with the play calling really is the lack of flow, the inability of setting up the next play with the previous play. That's where my issue is coming in, where you're not establishing a rushing attack, whether it's due to the lack of execution up front along the interior. There's things that you can do to work around that. You have 2 skilled running backs. You have a lot of extra offensive linemen. You have Ty Nsekhe and Ryan Bates, who you're hell-bent of keeping on this roster to be that extra offensive lineman in big packages. So there are things that you can do to work around the inefficiencies of the interior of the offensive line. I mean, we could start off by not cutting Quentin Spain. That would have been a good plan if you ask me. But they went the other direction. And regardless, the inability for the Bills to run the ball has a lot to do with both things. I feel like it mostly has to do with the execution of the interior of the offensive line, but I feel like a lot of it has to do with also the lack of flow with the play calling as well.
I just think that you're not a fan of Brian Daboll. Like, you just don't want to give him credit for being good.
I never did give him credit. That. Whoa.
Well,
okay.
I mean, well, go ahead.
You will give him credit for being good. I'll acknowledge that. You will, but you also are very quick to blame him, which I am not saying that you're wrong for doing so, but I think that there are a lot of factors at play here, and I'm not so strongly inclined to say this is all Brian Daboll's fault. The fact that the Bills couldn't put the ball in the end zone. I mean, they had 422 yards of offense. Like, they were obviously doing something right on the offensive side of the ball. And week 1, they were 3 for 8 in the red zone. I get that 0 for 6 or whatever is different than 3 for 8, but still, I mean, the Bills haven't been the first time they struggled to punch it in against the Jets too. I mean, am I crazy for saying maybe the Jets have good red zone defense and their defensive line plays into that? I mean, am I going to get grilled for saying that? It's a possibility.
I wouldn't grill you, not personally. I don't think that there's much that the Jets do well, so I can't really make that statement. But here's the thing, man. It's not on the play calling, and I know that that's kind of where Clayton wants to go. But listen, Brian Daboll is a good offensive coordinator. If we don't have him in Buffalo right now, he has a job tomorrow. Like, if we let him go right now, tomorrow he's interviewing with 4 different teams, and he'll have a job.
Okay. I agree with both of you. I do. I wholeheartedly do. I never said Brian Daboll is absolutely awful. I haven't said it this season, at least. But, Jeff, you brought up the point that I understand we were talking about this before the show, so you guys knew where I was going to go with it. Let's talk about the 0 for 5 in the red zone. Let's talk about how and why the Bills went 0 for 5 with their possessions in the red zone. And Jeff brings up an excellent point with the fact that through 2 games this season, the Bills are just 3 for 15 or 3 for 13 against the Jets in the red zone. And I mean, that's both really bad for the Bills offense, but it's also really good for the Jets defense. And I partially believe that the 0 for 5 in this game could definitely be a fluke. It could definitely be a fluke because in all the other games, the Bills are 13 for 14 in the red zone. So this is shown to not be a common theme. The Bills are not consistently bad in the red zone. But to your belief, Jeff, why do you think the Bills were unable to get it into the end zone this week?
I think it has something to do with the Jets defense, first of all, because, they looked stout. Their defensive line played an all right game. And I think that, the Bills having to go one-dimensional down there, their inability to run the football consistently came into play in the red zone because you can't open the field up as much when you're in that tight space. Obviously, you're forced to, throw shorter passes, fit the ball into tighter spaces. And if you're not able to run the ball downhill and, get 5 yards a pop in the red zone, then you're going to struggle. And I think that could have something to do with it as well.
James?
Yeah, so the way I see it, I think to your earlier point, I think the big thing is that the offense really missed John Brown. So with them double teaming Stephon Diggs, and then, to another point that we're making now, the rushing attack just isn't there right now because of our offensive line. So I think when the defense knows, okay, We're going to double Diggs, and then you have Tyler Croft and probably Beasley that you're going to focus on. Now, granted, Gabriel Davis has shown flashes throughout the season that makes us all excited as Bills fans, but we know when it's crunch time, you're going to go to the guys that you can depend on the most. So you're double teaming Stephon Diggs. You're going to force that in there and get an interception. If not, you're going to throw it to Beasley. Same thing. They're singling in on him. You don't have to worry about the rushing attack. You don't have to worry about, which is to me the confusing part. Now, if you want to talk about play calling, why aren't we passing the ball to our running backs out of the backfield? The couple plays that we did pass the ball to Singletary and he got in the open field, things happen. So that's part of the play calling that I can agree with you on. But I just think it comes down to the fact that we do miss our number 2 wide receiver. You know, it really shuts stuff down. We're not as open as we like to be when he's in there.
So you bring up an interesting point regarding play calling and scheming a running back open out of the backfield and making something happen with more creative play calling, getting other people involved other than just the receivers that you have at your disposal. And that is kind of where I'm going with this. I'm not going to place all of the blame of the Bills' inabilities to score in the red zone solely on the shoulders of Brian Dable, rather than give credit to Greg Williams. Because as bad as the personnel is for the New York Jets, from top to bottom, from front to back, on both sides of the ball, Greg Williams is a damn good football coach. He is a really good football coach. I understand people have their reservations regarding him and his cheating and Bountygate and what have you, but he's still a really good defensive coordinator. And when you get tightened up, when you get close into the back of the end zone like that and you have less ground to cover, it's a lot easier to scheme things up for your defense to make sure that the Bills that you're stopping the opposing offense and their tendencies in that area of the field. Personally, I believe that Greg Williams had Brian Dable's number in the red zone, because when you watch the game over, it wasn't even really a matter of lack of execution. There was nowhere for Josh Allen to go with the ball, as we talk about when you're doubling Diggs, when you're keying in on Cole Beasley and you're missing John Brown. There's not much for the defense to have to defend. It's much easier down at that end of the field for the defense to kind of stiffen up and attempt to make a stop. I understand, as I say, that the Bills are one of the best red zone teams in the league. But as I mentioned, they're 3 for 13 against the Jets in 2 games. Greg Williams knows what he's doing on that side of the ball, and I'm of the belief that he put his players in the best position to succeed by, just being a football coach, knowing the plays and knowing the tendencies of the Buffalo Bills in that area of the field. And I think that has much more to do with why the Bills were unable to score in this game in the red area. And, they only scored 3 times in 2 games against this team when they made red zone trips. I believe that has a lot to do with it, much more so rather than really putrid play calling for the Bills. I believe he got out schemed in this game in that area of the field.
Now, I agree with you, but I guess my biggest concern or my biggest point is, first of all, you're right. But if this was the Chiefs versus the Jets, it doesn't matter how good of a coach that Greg Williams appears to be on defense. The Chiefs are scoring touchdowns. So it comes to the point for me where it's like, I understand that, it's chess. It's a chess match between coaches. But sometimes as the more dominant team, as the better team, you just have to come out and put people on their ass. And I just feel like Sunday, the Bills didn't do that. Granted, we made it to the red zone. Like you said, and then the first game, we didn't have as many scores in the red area as well. It doesn't matter. We have to get to that point where we're just a better team, and we're going to line up and we're going to show you that we're the better team, and we're going to score when we feel like it. And Sunday, when you go against an 0-6 team, I don't care if it's Greg Williams. I don't care if it's Bill Belichick back there as the defensive coordinator. I don't care who it is. You can have John Madden. You can have an all-star coaching staff. I do not care. We needed to line up and show that other team that we were dominant, and we didn't do it. Granted, it's a division. It's a division game. We still didn't do it.
Perfect point right there. The Chiefs don't make excuses. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. They score. That's perfect. And that's what the Bills are trying to emulate as your offense. Clayton, I want to hear your grade for offensive play calling this week.
C+.
Okay. Wow.
What about you guys? Jeff?
I mean, I'm at C.
Okay. All right. James?
No, here's the thing. I'm the most negative out of the two of you, and I actually give them a B-. So, and the reason I give them a B- is because they did move the ball at will up and down the field. The problem is, to both of your points, in the red zone, Greg Williams knows what he's doing. We didn't have our number 2 wide receiver, so they kind of double-teamed Diggs, and there just wasn't anywhere else for them to go. But all day. Even the running game that we're talking about, we had some flashes there. We got to see Zach Moss kind of get a good run in there and break it down the field a little bit. We saw Devin Singletary in the first half have a couple good plays. So at the same time, I'm pissed off that we didn't score touchdowns. I'm not mad at the offense. The offense did its job besides getting it into the end zone.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I'm not fuming at the offense. I've certainly calmed down since the conclusion of the football game because I was
mad Sunday.
I had to watch it again to feel better. I really did. I had to watch it again to feel a little bit better, to kind of get a little more calm and composed in my feelings about the game and what have you. But speaking of calm and composed, that's certainly something that Sam Darnold was not in the second half of this football game.
No.
You saw the return of the Bills defense, and I understand that might be a stretch. I understand that might be hyperbolic. That might be an exaggeration, what have you, considering you're playing the worst offense in the league. But given how it was looking in the first half to begin the game, the Bills defense really kind of made a quick turnaround following that Dane Jackson interception. Now let's talk about Dane Jackson. In his first career start, his first career game, he gets 100% of the snaps. He looked really good. Every single play, he looked really, really good, aggressive. On the very first drive, Sam Darnold rolled out to his left and looked for, I believe it was either Brashard Perryman or Denzel Mims, and Dane Jackson baited him into throwing the ball, and he was right there to break it up.
Yep.
Let's talk about Dane Jackson. Spence, how are you feeling about Dane Jackson coming out of this football game?
I love Dane Jackson. Even during the summer, I wanted him to make the roster. But I was looking forward to seeing him compete with the Levi Wallaces or the Taron Johnsons. I wanted to see him take somebody's role. I didn't want to see him now, if he's not developed, I get it. I thought that he could come in, and we saw it yesterday. Granted, it was week 7, so he's had a few weeks to kind of, learn the system a little bit better and be around these guys who are already pros. But I thought he could come in and compete. So I'm hoping now that we saw this performance from him, I'm hoping that the coaching staff will say, look, Josh Norman is still injured. Levi Wallace is still injured. We're going to let this guy play. And the more reps that we see him get, I would love to see if he can really establish a real place on this team. Because I'm telling you, man, all the fans who are clamoring for Duke, you need to be clamoring for this guy.
Yeah, 100% snaps played in your first career game is just, it's really an odd stat. It's impressive. It's remarkable that they have so much trust in this guy to go out there and play these consistent snaps. And now maybe that's somewhat out of necessity because you're thin in the secondary with guys being out, but still it speaks volumes to how they feel about this guy being able to come in and contribute going forward. And, speaking of the defense as a whole, this was a bit different than most weeks because the Bills defense really came out and dominated the second half. Whereas in weeks past, we've been on here talking about second half adjustments and teams coming out after halftime and really kind of not having their way with the Bills, but finding more success than before. And when the Buffalo offense was stagnant, it didn't matter. Maybe not stagnant is the right word, but they weren't putting the ball in the end zone and getting that lead. I mean, it was 12-10 late in the game. And it didn't matter because the Jets just couldn't get anything going. And big stat that I like this week is the time of possession difference between this game and the Chiefs game. Buffalo had the ball for over 34 minutes against the Jets this week. And the week before against Kansas City, they only had it for 22 minutes. It's a huge difference with resting your defense, first of all, not making those guys be on the field that much, but also giving your offense a lot more time to go out and score points.
See, that was something I was concerned of in the first half, because in the first half it was skewed towards the Jets a little bit. I believe it was 18-11 or 18-12. It was 18-11 with some seconds in there that added up to 30. So the Bills definitely fixed that on the offensive side of the ball in the second half. But speaking to the defense, they really, after the Dane Jackson interception, which is really why I wanted to talk about it, I believe it was really the turning point of this football game, because I understand it happened right before half. And a lot of halftime adjustments probably play a large part into why the Bills defense looked the way it did in the second half in comparison to the first half. But that was really the turning point of the game for the Bills defense. After that interception, the Bills only allowed 4 yards. That's an incredible statistic. I mean, whether that speaks more volumes to how bad Adam Gase and the Jets offense is or how good the Bills defense is, we don't know yet. But going back to Dane Jackson, you guys mentioned with Levi Wallace injured, Josh Norman injured. These guys, I believe you need to give Dane Jackson another opportunity this week. There's no need to rush your cornerbacks back against this New England Patriots team. There really isn't. I understand you're playing Julian Edelman, and I understand you might be playing N'Keal Harry, who's questionable with an injury at this current moment. But I really want to see them give Dane Jackson a full run. Because like Backbone 5 says in the chat, oh boy. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad with this chat. Oh my God. I want to see Dane Jackson play against better talent. He looked great though. And I agree with him 110% because that is how I feel about Dane Jackson after this football game. I'm not sitting here saying he's the best cornerback on the team. I'm not sitting here saying he's better than Levi Wallace, he's better than Josh Norman, or he's better than anybody. But what I am saying is he played 100% of the snaps of NFL football this week with limited time to prepare this season, going into the year without OTAs, without preseason, nothing of the which most rookies have going into their first season. And he did not. It's extremely challenging. And
I'm going to challenge you, I'm saying, when you're done with your point.
You're going to challenge me okay. But it's extremely difficult for a player to come into the league and do something of that manner. But what I am interested to see is to see how Dane Jackson plays and strings games together. That's what I really want to see, because once teams get film on you, once teams find your deficiencies and your tendencies as a football player and start to target those certain deficiencies and tendencies, that's the most challenging part of being a player in the NFL, is adapting to what teams do to try and beat you. So I'm excited to see what he can do going forward.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on one of the things you just said. I know you said you're not going to say it, so maybe you think it and you're just not saying it for the sake of not ruffling feathers. I think that he can beat out Levi Wallace. Like I don't think Levi Wallace is as good as the team wants us to believe he is. And I'm not a hater. I love Levi. I have a signed helmet from him. I have a jersey from him. But at the same time, he consistently gives up plays. Consistently, he's the one being beat. Consistently, that's Levi. So for me, it's like I would much rather see Dane. Much rather.
You know who else is also consistently the liability? Taron Johnson. And if Josh Norman can come into this defense, I understand how he looked, but if Josh Norman is ultimately the best option for the Bills at that outside corner spot, which he could be or he could not be, because he's shown deficiencies this year as well. But the point is I really like the rotation the Bills could have with their cornerbacks, with Tre'Davious White, Josh Norman, Levi Wallace, Dane Jackson. I'm not even going to mention Taron Johnson. There's nothing I've seen from Taron Johnson this year to give me any kind of optimism regarding his play as a football player. And to be quite honest with you, I believe that Taron Johnson is much better fit to be a situational blitz player coming off of the edge, much to like how he was used in his rookie season. I believe that that's ultimately his best skill set as a football player. Dane Jackson, like PJ Teach says in the comments, can Dane Jackson play nickel or just outside? Jeff, do you think he could play nickel or just outside?
Well, I think that when you get Wallace back, then that position, the guy who's playing aside from Trey, I should say, how about playing a cornerback by committee? You don't need a designated number 2 guy to eat up all those snaps. You play situations. You play Dane Jackson when the situation fits. You play Wallace when the situation fits. And you play Josh Norman when the situation fits. You've got those 3 guys. None of them are obviously your stud like Trey is, but if they can rotate, all stay fresh and eat up those snaps consistently, then I think that might be your best plan of attack. They're all slightly different players, which is why you can use them in slightly different ways. I didn't really answer the question directly, but
no. You did though, because they've shown that they're not afraid to rotate different cornerbacks in to do different jobs, similar to how they did last year when they'd rotate Kevin Johnson and Levi Wallace at that opposite boundary. So it certainly is an aspect that a lot of people aren't thinking about, that they could use quote unquote cornerback 2 by committee or nickel cornerback by committee for certain situations in which it's applicable. Spence, what are you thinking?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. But like I said, prior to the question being asked, so whether he can play slot or not, like I just think that he should be able to take somebody's position. But I've said that all summer. So, I'm just riding on the fact that right now, and if anybody wants to yell at me about it, fine. But I just feel like he's probably at this point our second best cornerback on our team. And that's what I felt that this whole year. I felt that since we drafted him.
The king and the king of hot takes. That's what it is right here. I love that. And then you know what? If it pans out, I will be tagging you on Twitter and having a conversation with you about it. Before
we move on, just think about it real quick though, because So I was one that was super excited that Josh Norman was signing with us. I remember it. The day he signed, I was moving to Phoenix. Like literally, I was at the airport when I got the notification from the Buffalo Bills that we had signed Josh Norman. I was excited about that. Levi Wallace, like I said, he's a good dude. Last year, the defense played very well. He gave us some big plays last year, but I was excited. Like, hey, this year we're going into it, dude. When we drafted Jackson, I'm like, this guy is good. He's better than a 7th round pick. He's better than where we picked him. He's going to surprise some people. Now, you fast forward to the season. Josh Norman has been being abused for the couple of games that he was in there. Levi Wallace for the first few weeks, and I get it, everybody, it seems like every defense has been being abused, and our team hasn't looked the way we thought they would. But, dude, our cornerbacks have been being abused with the exception of Trey. I know Trey gave up the one touchdown against Miami that looked pretty bad, but it actually was just a great throw by Fitz. And then another touchdown that he gave up that to me still wasn't, it doesn't look like Trey has fallen off. It looks like the defense is bad and it puts Trey in some situations that he's not used to being in. If we can get Jackson or somebody to not get beat on that other side of the field, dude, our defense will look a lot better very quickly. Very quickly. And granted, this team Sunday that we played against just doesn't have a good offense, but that's the type of defense that we should put on the field every single week.
Yeah, and if your secondary is getting that much better, then you can focus on finding ways to slow down opposing teams' running game, which really is at the core of a problem for the defense. And getting your secondary stronger helps alleviate that as well.
Right. Now, what also made this defense very strong this week was the appearance of Jerry Hughes. We've been hearing it. He's always getting his pressures. Jerry Hughes has been getting pressures for the last 3 years, yet I haven't seen the sack totals. But this week, he totaled 2 sacks with an interception. He lit it up in that second half, man. And I really liked what the Bills were doing with their fronts, with what they were doing with their looks. They played a lot of standing up end. They had Trent Murphy standing up. They had Mario Addison standing up. They had Jerry Hughes standing up. They had AJ Epinesa standing up. Now, what AJ Epinesa doesn't have in common with those other 3 players is he doesn't have much experience in a 3-4 defense where he is a stand-up end in those situations. So I was actually talking to Jeremy Turner Montgomery this past week about how they should be running more stand-up looks with their ends. I'm not saying running it on first downs. I'm not saying running on second downs. I think you should be doing that situationally, because when you look at tackles such as what the Jets have on the field, like George Fant, like Mekhi Becton, 2 big, huge humans of men that are they're massive. They're not all that fast. They're not all that agile. And when you set ends up in wide looks in a stand-up look, it almost gives them an extra step on the offensive tackle. And we saw it this week as AJ Epinesa was making plays. Jerry Hughes, as I previously mentioned, had 2 sacks in the second half. And we saw AJ Epinesa in the backfield making plays. I was very encouraged by how the Bills' defensive end room looked this week. Jeff, what were your feelings of the Bills' pass rush after what has been their best performance of the season, to my point?
I'm always happy when Jerry Hughes has a good game. I mean, he's been on the team forever. I mean, he's a likable guy. I feel like he's good for his classic one unsportsmanlike conduct penalty a game, which we all have a good laugh at when that happens. He really was a presence on the field, and he had that pick, which is a cool thing for him. The CBS broadcasters during the game saying, "Oh, when you find yourself in the right time, when you're putting yourself in those positions, the whole game, then that's what's going to happen." And it did. I thought that the pressure on the quarterback was noticeable more than it was in previous weeks. And that's a big step forward, because before it was, okay, we can't stop the run and we can't put pressure on the quarterback. Those are 2 huge problems. Now, if you can alleviate one of those, you're pressuring the quarterback. Now you just need to find that run stopper who's going to step up in the middle of your defensive line. But very improved play from the defensive ends this week. I thought that AJ Epinesa's performance was very encouraging as far as him maybe taking some steps forward and becoming to where you can really rely on him to eat up big snaps later in this season, or even further down in his career.
Spence?
Yeah, I agree. The only thing, so with the comments about Jerry, I just disagree. I agree fully, but I disagree a little bit, because I feel like he always has good games. Like, he plays hard every week. I get that sometimes the numbers doesn't show that he plays well and the numbers doesn't show. But if you watch the film and you watch the all 22, like I know the both of you do, he plays hard every week. The difference is, so first, he actually got a holding call this week. Whoa, like that never happens for Jerry. Then secondly, the thing is, I don't put it on that unit has to play well together. So, like last year, I always make this big fuss because everybody thinks that we miss Jordan Phillips the most. I think that he benefited from having hungry players on the line. Right now, it doesn't seem like we have that same type of hunger on the line to have other players benefit from it the same way we did last season with Jordan Phillips. So I agree that, now we're getting a little bit of pressure. So we kind of hopefully fixed one issue and we need to learn to fix the other. But just to the point about Jerry, man, I think Jerry's a baller, man. He plays hard every single week. He gets held pretty much 85% of the time. He just never gets calls. And and I get it. It looks bad because at the end of the game, if you don't watch the game, you look at the stats and he's played pretty much 80% of the snaps and he doesn't have any sacks or, so I get it. But no, Jerry plays lights out, man, every week.
Yeah, and there's a reason why Jerry Hughes has been on the team for this long. It's because he has quality games, whether it shows or not. That's why he's been on the team for so long. I mean, he's got to be one of the longest tenured Bills.
He is. He is the longest tenured Bill.
I was going to say, I think he is the longest tenured.
I love it when Spence brings the heat. But the both of you both alluded to the fact that this defense is missing something. So before we move on to talk about the New England Patriots with the trade deadline looming, Spence, I want to hear from you whether you believe the Bills should or should not make a move prior to the trade deadline. And if they should, who do you hope they make a move for?
Well, I absolutely think that we should make a move for a defensive tackle. Now, I don't know how true the story is coming out of the New Jersey, media that the Jets are looking to trade away their former first-round defensive tackle. If that is the case, the Bills better, and I think it's just for like a second-round pick. If that's the case, Quentin, he still has 2 years left on his rookie deal, plus, the option for the 5th year, for the team option. Listen, that's a move you make 10 times out of 10. I get it. Our salary cap is a little strapped at the moment. We'll figure it out. You make that move and you get him. If we have to let go of somebody that we was in love with, fine. If we have to rework some money around, fine. You go and get that guy out of New Jersey right now.
Now, before you go, Jeff, I will mention Quinnen Williams had another incredible game against Mitch Morse, the highest paid center in football. And all 4 of their matchups, that's something that we have said coming out of the game in which the Bills played the Jets. Quinnen Williams consistently has quality football games against quality offensive linemen. He is a damn good football player. I'm not sure of the certainty of whether or not they're going to move him, but if they are and the Bills don't inquire, I'm not sure what you're doing. Now, Jeff, do you think they should make a move? And if so, who for?
You should absolutely give up a second-round pick for Quinnen Williams. I mean, if the Bills can stop the run, imagine how much better that makes this football team. If they're consistently stopping teams running games like they were last year, imagine how much better this football team becomes. If you're not allowing the Kansas City Chiefs to run for 7.5 yards per carry in the rain, your team is so much better. And second-round pick, I don't think that's too steep of an asking price of a guy who was drafted, 3rd overall, something like that. And I don't know if the price goes up because you're in the division with the Jets. If it does, then that maybe might put you in a tough situation. But if second round pick is the asking price, give it to him. Give it to him. It makes you so much more valuable.
Yeah, I see a couple people in the comments saying that a second is too high for this guy. I assume, and I don't want to say this to be mean, so that's what I'm saying. I assume you just don't watch much of the New York Jets play football, because if you watched them play football and you knew who this guy was, I guarantee you would say all they want is a second round pick. Go get him. Now, granted, he hasn't played consistently well, but I think that plays into the fact that his coach is who it is. There's a reason why the whole team hasn't played consistent. Last season, we thought that the Jets were going to be a decent team. They had all the weapons in the world on defense and on offense. Didn't happen because of the coaching. Quentin, man, if we can get Quinnen Williams on this defense, it's like, man, I'm with it. I'm ready. Matter of fact, cut star. I know it's like we push that to the back. Cut star, bring him in. Or let's get rid of Trent, bring him in. Whatever you got to do to bring this guy in. A second round pick is not too much. I would do a second round pick. I'd trade away somebody. I'd cut somebody. who you want cut.
Yeah, and if anyone is looking for some good Quinnen Williams highlights to watch, and you maybe might not watch the Jets that much, go watch him play at Alabama. He absolutely ate people alive. I've been a huge fan of this guy since he was playing on those stacked Bama teams that have been around for forever now. He was destroying the SEC, and it's translated into the NFL. He's a good quality player, and he eats up quality snaps, and that's what you need right now.
See, I hate being the bearer of bad news. I hate it. I always hate it. I would love Quinnen Williams on this defense. Love it. I think the Bills' defensive line would go from what has been right now a suspect defensive line, a line that has not been good in either facet, in either the run defense or the pass defense and pass rush. That is, I believe he'd automatically improve both of those areas drastically, and that's what you need so bad. But given the lack of likelihood that I feel like the Jets would move him in the division for just a second round pick, I don't see that happening. I really don't. I really don't think a move like that is feasible. Don't get me wrong. I think the Jets are stupid. I don't like what they do. I don't think they make smart moves, but I don't think they're that stupid. Even Bill O'Brien was smart enough to trade DeAndre Hopkins out of the conference. So I don't think Quinnen Williams, as much as I love it, I don't see it as very likely. And I agree with both of you that if it's feasible, you should go for it. But in my opinion, I think the most likely option for the Bills to make a move prior to the deadline, which is far more cost efficient, which kind of fits the mold of what they need. They really need a 1-year rental because Star Lotulelei, I understand, Spence. I was a huge harper on Star Lotulelei the last couple of years as well. Huge. I didn't necessarily like him. I didn't necessarily see the production right there. I didn't see his role. But now with him being pulled out of this defense, I absolutely do. And I have eaten crow on all of those words. I'm not saying that Star Lotulelei is the difference a huge difference maker in the NFL, but he is damn sure a huge difference maker for this defense. Mm-hmm. So fitting the point I'm getting at is he's going to cost $9 million in dead cap if you cut him next year. So he is on the roster next year for 2021. And that pains me to say. And the situation they were going to have was they were going to be able to cut him after 2021, given that he didn't opt out. But since he opted out, it moves everything forward a year. So now they're not even going to be able to. It's not going to be feasible to move him until 2022. So I think the most likely move for the Bills to make at the trade deadline is for defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins. Sheldon Rankins, who was a former first-round pick, hasn't really been able to gel there in New Orleans, dealt with an injury, I believe, a couple years ago, but has rebounded. I believe it'll cost you a day 3 draft pick. I don't think it's going to cost you a second. I don't think it's going to cost you a third. And Sheldon Rankins is coming into the final year of his contract. I understand a lot of people are hyped up about Davlin Tomlinson. Jeremy Turner Montgomery mentioned on postgame that he looked incredible on Thursday Night Football last week. And I watched that game as well, and I agree. I don't think they're going to move him given the lack of production from Leonard Williams ever since they brought him to that side of New York. So right now, if the Bills are going to make a move before the trade deadline, I think it's going to be for Saints defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins. And I 110% believe they should make a move because if you get that one technique defensive tackle, you fix your defensive issues from front to back.
Yeah. The secondary looks better. Your linebackers look better. Everything just feels better if you fix that one problem. To your one point, though, I did want to say, so I am a Star fan. I know I said we could cut or trade Star. I've been a Star fan this whole time. So I know you follow me on Twitter. I've been that guy saying, I thought we don't miss Star. I thought we don't miss Star. I've been that guy. So, but at the same time with me saying that, if you can get Williams, just like I said a couple of weeks ago with Le'Veon Bell being a free agent at the time, if you can get Le'Veon Bell, as much as I love Devin Singletary and as much as I think Zach Moss is going to be, I think he's going to be amazing. You sign Le'Veon Bell if you have the chance for it. So what I'm saying is, as much as I love Star, as much as I love whoever else that we would need to move if this were to ever happen, it won't happen. But if it ever were to happen, you do it. You make that move 10 times out of 10 and you don't regret it. You don't think twice about it. You just do it.
Pull that trigger, baby. Pull the trigger.
But I also agree with you about the Saints, about that move there.
I'd love to see it happen. I'd love to see the Bills fix their defense, because that's really what's missing is their one technique defensive tackle to keep their middle linebacker clean, to kind of give them the versatility that they wanted with that defensive line going into the season, where you can move Quentin Jefferson from 3 technique to 5 technique, and you're not forced to play him inside at 1 technique in positions where he's not correctly utilized. But with that, we got to get into the New England Patriots.
Let's do it.
My goodness, this is going to be one heck of a football game. I'm really looking forward to it. After the Patriots dropped a game last week, 33-6, in which you saw Cam Newton get benched, they're looking as vulnerable as ever. Jeff, how are you feeling going into this game overall?
I don't know. This one has the potential to be ugly. As inconsistent as the Bills' offense has been, New England has been worse. They're 24th in the NFL in overall offense. They're 30th in passing, and they're 4th in rushing. And that presents an intriguing matchup for the Bills' defense. It's 21st in run defense and 15th in pass defense. The defensive line play for Buffalo is going to be so crucial to stop the Patriots and make them beat you through the air, because Cam Newton has been downright bad for a lot of this year. And, the Bills' pass rush, it was improved this week. We got to see that again. I said last week on the show that the Bills defensive line isn't going to be fixed by just bringing in one player. You're going to have some guys step up from within. Jerry Hughes did that. He made his presence shown. The defensive ends did that against the Jets. And if they can continue to do that, then that opens up the opportunity to maybe we can get that one player that stops the run game. And that's me going off on a tangent a little bit, but I really think that slowing down the New England rushing offense is going to be so critical for the Bills to make them beat you in the air, because I don't think they can. I don't think they can beat barely anybody in the air.
Spence.
So Jeff, what you just said, you know how you play Madden at all?
Oh yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
So in the fourth quarter when it gets real and you sit up and you got me sitting up,
yep.
You're gonna put some respect on my guy Cam Newton's name is what you're gonna do. Okay. So the last 2 weeks he came back after having COVID. He's played horribly. The guy came back after having COVID. The first few weeks of the season, you can't say he's been playing bad. The offense wasn't a passing offense. Cam Newton dominated the first couple of weeks of the season, and you had people saying, oh, maybe New England might still be good because of Cam Newton's play. We're not going to sit here and act like Cam isn't who Cam is. Let's come on, Jeff. You got to chill, man. You made me sit up, and I was real comfortable.
So yeah, they're rushing first offense. Obviously, that's their identity. He had the one big game against Seattle. Other than that, he hasn't done much. And now, is that him just managing the game? I mean, you tell me, is that him managing the game? But he's only thrown for over 162 yards once this season.
Well, they don't have people to throw it to. It's the same. They have the same guys there that Tom Brady was throwing to last year. And everybody was saying, oh, Tom has to go. And now that he's in Tampa Bay, he looks so much better. Cam is throwing to the same guys. So we have people in the comments here saying Cam is washed. Or how about Cam has the worst receivers in the league? He actually would perform better if he was on the New York Jets roster. And that's a fact.
So do you think that Cam Newton has the capability to beat the Bills through the air? If you're Patriots average rushing attack, Newton's got to beat you. Can he do it?
With that team? No. But I also think that Cam Newton has the ability, COVID plays a big part of this. If he's recovered, I don't know what it's like to be a player and come back from COVID and play in a professional NFL game against professional NFL talent. This is the first time it's happened for any league, so it's a difference. But when you talk about Cam Newton, that guy, he just like Josh Allen can beat you on the ground and run for 100 yards and rush for 2 touchdowns. Cam Newton can do the same thing. And our defensive line, we just got done talking about it. We cannot stop the run. We looked a little bit better in the second half of this game against the Jets. Well, we looked great. Against the Jets, though, it's the 0-6 Jets. They had Frank Gore. If you listen to my pod, you heard how pissed I was that for 5.5 yards a carry against the Buffalo Bills in 2020. He's only 89 years old, averaging 5.5 yards a carry. So you put somebody like Cam Newton, who's a freaking beast. And I get it. We don't like Cam. We don't like that he dresses different, and we don't like this, and we don't like that. He's a sore loser. Cam Newton will run through your defensive line if you don't. If there's no gap integrity and people aren't doing their job, Cam Newton will destroy a defense if they let him with his feet. So I'm just saying, I get Bills fans don't really like him, and I get we hate the Patriots. Y'all gonna put some respect on my guy Cam's name. I had to sit up. I'm sitting back and getting comfortable again.
Clayton, where do you fall on this issue?
Oh, I always love it when I get a guest on. They start arguing with somebody. It's always fun.
I'm gonna get you too because I feel like you're gonna disrespect Cam. I feel it.
Wow. Whoa, ease up, man. I fall on the fence. I don't fall on either side of the fence. I fall directly on it, and that's where I like to sit because this is the way I see it.
Interesting.
Like Spence mentioned, Cam Newton has been far better utilized this season as a running quarterback due to the lack of the receiving talent that he has. You have a 38-year-old, I'm sorry, he's not 38, but you have Julian Edelman, who is a shell of himself since you have lost Tom Brady. It is fairly obvious that Julian Edelman is certainly not the same player that he was with Tom Brady on the roster. And then you have N'Keal Harry, who really as an athlete who's 6'2", and he has a solid frame for a wide receiver, but the fact that he is the only threatening factor of their receiving core that isn't Julian Edelman is a huge problem because as a bigger wide receiver, it is far more difficult for him to gain separation in whether it's one-on-one coverage or double coverage, and which is often what he sees given the fact that you really only have two threats in that offense. So I agree that is really why he has been primarily used as a rushing quarterback, and he has had deficiencies as a passer, which is why I believe that it is crucial for the Bills in this game to gain a 2-possession lead and force the Patriots' hand in this game to make them have to throw the ball with Cam Newton. Not because necessarily Cam Newton is a washed football player. The dude was an MVP a couple of years ago. I have never been a proponent that Cam Newton is a washed football player. He is a damn talented kid. I can't call him a kid. He's a grown-ass man. He's 31 years old. So he is a really talented football player, and he is placed in a non-ideal situation that not even the greatest quarterback of all time in the twilight of his career could utilize in that situation, where you saw that offense look completely different than it would look like if they'd have just given Brady some options. So I tend to agree with both of you. Cam Newton, he's a solid football player. He's a polarizing football player. Is he what he was as an MVP? Absolutely not. But is he as bad as everybody makes him out to be? That is also completely false.
Yeah, no, and so the thing is, and I guess maybe for me, I just kind of take offense to it when people say he's washed, because it's like he's not what he's on the same team that the literal GOAT that everybody calls the GOAT. Last year, he could do nothing with this team. Nothing. There's a reason why he wanted to get out of there so quickly. So
if he remained in Carolina, how well do you think they do right now with all of their targets? How well do you think he does with DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson? Christian McCaffrey is going to come back. Mike Davis has been doing solid. So I think it's a fair argument to say if he stayed in Carolina, he'd be doing better in there than he is right now with the New England Patriots and the lack of offensive threats that they have either on the boundary or in the slot. I don't think the Patriots have a really good offense. They don't even have a good offensive line anymore, which is a huge problem, especially, I mean, it's not as bad with Cam Newton considering he's not necessarily a solely a pocket passer, and he has that mobility that Brady didn't have. And I really think Cam Newton, he's really the X factor in this game, because if the Bills can stop the Patriots rushing attack 2 or 3 drives consecutively and get a lead, and you force Cam Newton to throw the ball, it completely it changes the complexion of this football game. Not necessarily, like I mentioned, not because Cam Newton is an awful thrower of the football and he just lost his throwing motion after he injured his shoulder, because I think Cam Newton is a good football player. But I also think if you force this team to pass, you have them right where you want them, and you have them in a position where your defense can succeed.
Yeah, it's all about the front seven's ability to stop the Patriots running attack. I mean, Bills opponents are running it for 4.6 yards per carry this year. Keep that number under 4, and you're likely going to win the game.
And to Jeff's point earlier, you know, I do think just period, we're a better team. So Jeff is right. I just had to give him some drama about Cam there. But the thing is, we're supposed to win this game. I said on the pod this morning, we should absolutely be 6-2 come Sunday evening. We should be 6-2. There should be no questions about it. We should beat this team. Cam Newton doesn't have guys to throw to. If he did have the guys to throw to, there is still a question about his throw motion. But when it comes to being a running offense, I don't know if you guys remember, I'm sure you do, a couple years back, maybe like 4 or 5 years back, Miami when they first kind of started to be the team to do the Wildcat and the way it was just like unstoppable. I'm not saying Cam is that. He's not that effective. But for a team like the Buffalo Bills who seemingly can't stop the run every single week, you worry about a guy who can run the way Cam can run. And then those running backs, they haven't had huge games, but I guarantee you Bill Belichick is going to figure out how to run those running backs in favorable positions for them. So we should absolutely not sleep on this offense for the New England Patriots. Just because it's not going to come through the air doesn't mean that it can't come. And they will do it when you know it's coming.
So we've really talked about primarily Cam Newton and this run-heavy offense and how they like to utilize Cam Newton as a runner and his lack of targets as in the passing game. I really want to talk about this defense because the Patriots, they lost a ton of football players in free agency. They had numerous players opt out due to COVID, and they're really just kind of making patchwork with this defense. But at the same time, you see flashes. You see this defense be able to produce, be able to contain quarterbacks, contain teams. Spence, going into this game, and then Jeff, I'll kick it over to Jeff after Spence. Going into this game, what is the biggest concern for you about the Bills offense facing the Patriots defense?
My biggest concern right now is actually it's not even for the offense. It's not the offense itself. It's Josh Allen feeling as if this moment might be too big. So, and I know that sounds crazy because he has he's tied for, or he has the most fourth quarter wins and all this stuff. The thing is though, we saw it recently against the Chiefs now, and then last season and the season prior. When he plays against the Patriots, he knows how big of a game it is. And I feel like when Josh comes out in those big moments, I don't mean the clutch moments at the end of the game. I mean, when the moment itself is too bright for him, he hasn't played well. And I'm hoping and praying to God that Josh comes out, he's settled, and he can just come out and just show, hey, I'm the best quarterback in the AFC East, as opposed to him feeling like, the monkey is on his back and he has to. When you go into a game with that mentality, like, oh, okay, I got to do this to get this monkey off my back, you're going to screw up because you're trying too hard. So I'm just really hoping that he comes in and he's calm. He can lead this team and he can just be the Josh that we saw for the first 5-6 weeks of the season.
I hate sitting here every week and saying the Bills need to run the football more because I think that they've kind of developed that pass-heavy identity as an offense. I think they're ranked number 2 in the league as far as how often they throw the football. But New England's ranked 27th in run defense and 11th in pass defense. Run the ball for 5 yards per carry, and the Bills likely win this game. Now, they're running at 3.9 yards per carry so far this season. Get that up to 5, and you're putting yourself in a much better position to win. And now, yeah, I mean, it's easy to sit here every week and say, run the football more because you're passing it. And now, look, if you run it, you'll be so much better. That's easy for us to say. But against this team, against this matchup you're going against, if you can get creative with Allen when design runs, or whether him, kind of getting out of the pocket and getting into the secondary when you're hitting zone defenses against him, if you can run that football, you're going to have a lot of success on Sunday against this Patriots defense.
Spence, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit.
Okay.
Because I understand in the regard of how big the Patriots are, how big that game is for the Buffalo Bills as an organization. But the game is nowhere near as large as in years past because he is not facing his childhood idol. I believe that kind of makes the starstruck moment, the deer in the headlights Josh to start the game where you can see the butterflies, you can see he's antsy, you can see that he's nervous for the moment. I don't think you see nearly as much of that in this game. Do I think that you could see it end up being applied to Josh Allen due to given various pressures and things that Bill Belichick can do to kind of make his head rattle and make him look like a deer in the headlights? Yes, I do believe that can happen. But I don't believe you're nearly going to see as much the same Josh Allen you saw to start the Patriots game at the end of last season. Or damn sure you're not going to see the same quarterback that you saw in week 3 of last season as well, where you saw him throwing it everywhere and throwing it to defenders and Zay Jones just letting people catch the ball that weren't on his team and such. But I believe in this game that is a huge thing that I want to see because I disagree, but I also agree. I also think that it is a huge factor that we see the confident Josh Allen return. Because I don't know about you guys, even though Josh Allen put up nearly 400 total yards last week, I still don't see the same swagger he had the first month of the season. I don't see that same that cockiness, that arrogance, if you will, because I'm not saying that it's a good thing to be an arrogant person. I'm not saying it's a good thing to be overzealous, if you will, but that's not what he is. There is a zone that you get in as a football player where it's like, yeah, I'm on top of the world and I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to run and I'm going to keep standing on top of the world and I'm going to go with it. And that's the kind of feeling that Josh Allen embodied in the first 3-4 weeks of the season. In the last 3, it's kind of dwindled a little bit. Even though he had a spurt of production last week, I didn't see it as much as I would have expected in a huge game like that, or not necessarily a huge game, but a huge productive day like that for Josh Allen. Whereas in the first 4 weeks of the season, you could see that dude's oozing confidence. That dude is oozing the swagger. That is the Josh Allen that I want to see this week. Because if that's the Josh Allen we get, that Josh Allen's going to tear up that defense. And I don't think this one's going to be close.
Oh, yeah. And I agree. And to your first point, I hope that this isn't, like last year because he's not playing against Tom Brady. But the thing is, whether it's Tom Brady or not, I feel like it's the Patriots. It's Patriots week. We haven't been able to be the big brothers in this relationship for almost 20 years. And I think Josh understands for Western New York, whether Tom Brady is there or not, we hate the Patriots. So it's still a huge game, whether they're 2-6, they could be 1-14 at the end of the season, and it's still the Patriots. It's a huge game for us. So I agree. I hope that this is not that's not the Josh we see. But like I said, I don't know. I'm nervous about that because against the Chiefs, the moment was too big for him. He came out, and granted, it was raining and all the excuses that everybody tried to give him. He didn't play like the Josh Allen that we saw in the first 5 weeks of the season. So that's my concern.
Yeah, I want to see a lot of continuity from last week to this for the Bills. I know we talked about the Jets game being a get-right game, a chance for Buffalo to be able to do that, and they did a lot of things better than they had the 2 previous weeks. And so I want to see continuity. Bring that into a game against the Patriots. Like Spence said, it doesn't matter where the Patriots are at right now. They're 2-4. Big deal. It's still a team you can't beat. It's still a team you haven't beat consistently in decades. And so let's see some continuity. Let's get those positives from last week, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Let's carry those over and, see if you can come out of here with a win and you're 6-2.
As I mentioned on the onset, this is a platform of hospitality. So it is time that we get into the weekly predictions for this matchup. The Patriots visiting the Bills. I believe the line currently stands. The Bills are 3.5-point favorites. Whew. It's a little sus if you ask me. Spence, how are you feeling? What's your score prediction and why?
Well, I'm thinking it's Bills over Pats 33-17. And I think the reason is the game plan that you pretty much mentioned. Like when you said, we have to get up on them by at least 2 scores and force Cam to throw the ball. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to get to the point where we'll come out early. Josh is going to come out on fire. Hopefully Coach Dayball will script the first couple of drives and we'll come out and we'll be, just fantastic. And once that happens, Cam can't run the ball all day. The running backs can't run the ball all day. So then, yeah, they're going to try to open it up. They're not going to be able to do much. And I think the Bills are just going to have their way with it.
Jeff.
I see a lot of people in the comments predicting scores in the 30s from the 20s for the Bills like Spence did. That could very well happen. Josh Allen could come out and have a big day. I think he's proved to us that he has the capability. He has the skill set to do that on any given week. But I don't know if he does it this week. I want Josh to come out and prove to me that he can beat that Patriots defense, that he can put up those big numbers in a big game, because like we've said all show, this is a big game regardless of what the Patriots record is. I think the Bills are going to win the game because I think that they're going to be able to do enough to slow down Cam Newton and the Patriots rushing attack. I've got the Bills winning 17-13. And with the ability, with the potential of that Buffalo score being high, I don't think it's going to be this week.
If I have to watch another game where they don't score 20 points, Jeff.
Well,
hey,
the thing about that, and so I could absolutely see you saying that, and the reason for me to agree with you is that Coach Belichick, to me, is still one of the best defensive minds in all of football. But the thing so the point that I made earlier about the Jets, where I'm like, you know what, but I'm sick of this. Like, the Chiefs come out and it doesn't matter who the defensive coordinator is, they score. I feel like, at least I'm hoping, that my Buffalo Bills and my coach of the Buffalo Bills are embarrassed at the fact that they could not score a touchdown against the New Jersey Football Jets. So I feel like they're going to come out against the New England Patriots and they're going to say, okay, we're going to show you guys that we can just dominate. And we are better than this team, just like we were better against the Jets. So we're going to come out and do the damn thing. So that's why I think it's going to be 33-17, but I could absolutely see it going that way, Jeff. I could see it.
Yeah, I could see it too, unfortunately. And I know I seemed ultimately dramatic that he predicted a score of 17, and I'm only going to predict 6 more points for the Bills. But I'm going to say the Bills are going to win this game 23-10, like Ray Cruz said in the chat, and here's why. I believe the Patriots only score 10 points simply due to the fact that, think about it, Sean McDermott is coaching against the quarterback that he faced every day in practice for however long in Carolina. You don't think Brandon Beane was a part of the recruitment process and the scouting process? I don't know why I said recruitment. This isn't college, folks. I'm sorry. I misspeak sometimes. But the scouting process for Cam Newton, he knows him up and down as a football player. He knows all of his tendencies, all of his deficiencies, all the things he's good at. I understand those things kind of change over the years, but it's not like they don't watch film. So the point I'm trying to get at is I don't think you're going to see an efficient Patriots offense. I don't think you're going to see the Patriots easily move the ball up and down the field. I don't think it's going to be an easy day for Cam Newton back there, because I think Leslie Frazier and I think Sean McDermott are going to be on it this week, and they're going to be ready to face Cam Newton. And might I mind you, the only mobile quarterback that I've ever really seen have a successful day against Sean McDermott is Patrick Mahomes, and that just happened a couple weeks ago. So with that, I'm taking the Bills winning this game 23-10. It's a big game. The Bills have a chance to have a stranglehold atop the AFC East, being 4-0 the division, 6-2 8 weeks into the season. And you have, I believe it's 2 NFC opponents after that game. So This is a huge week for the Bills to try and, potentially clinch the division halfway through the season. That's huge. Jeff, when's the last time you ever watched the Bills team win the division? Because I've never seen it.
Well, it hasn't happened since I've been alive. So,
Spence, this is where you sound old and you say it happened like however long.
Yeah, it happened years ago for me. I was a kid. So, I'm 34. So that lets you know it's been a while. But it's gonna feel good. This is gonna be good to see.
Yeah. And Spence, you can play along with this as well if you'd like. Jeff and we have to get into our weekly predictions around the AFC East. Let's start it off with this slugfest. Well, I wouldn't call it a slugfest, but it's going to be a slaughterhouse. That's what it's going to be. The Jets visiting the Kansas City Chiefs. Jeff, what do you got?
Chiefs 38, Jets 6.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. I'm going Chiefs 45, Jets 3.
Wow, we're just going up and down all over the place. I'm going.
It's gonna be ridiculous, that game.
It's gonna be fun. I like watching the Jets get their asses kicked. It's great. It's just great. But I'm gonna go with the Chiefs winning this game. I'll say 37-3. So I'm gonna agree with Spence in that regard on the Jets score. Now, who are the Dolphins playing this week?
The Rams.
Yes, they're playing the Rams. They're hosting the Rams, and the Dolphins are starting Tua Tagovailoa in his first career start. Jeff, who you got?
Yeah, so first look at this game was really intriguing. The Dolphins have played well at points in this year, and the Rams have kind of been an up and down team, I felt. So I think this game's going to be tight. And I thought about picking the Dolphins. Then I remember they benched Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has played well all year. So therefore, the Rams are going to win. It'll be 23-17.
Spence?
I agree with the score, but I flip it. I think Miami beats them.
Wow.
I think Tua comes out and get the first win of his career, and I think the AFC East will be put on notice. I thought for the longest while that he was going to be the best quarterback out of the draft, obviously, but I also thought whatever division he went to, he was going to be a top 2 quarterback in any division in the league, and I still feel that way.
All right, I'm going to take the Rams simply because I think they're hot. You never, quarterbacks making their first start in this league, it's difficult. And the Rams defense has been on fire. Last night, I should say, they looked really good last night. And Aaron Donald going up against that young offensive line, which has gelled very well throughout the course of the season, I feel like, but they're fairly young. And Aaron Donald gets the better of the best offensive lineman in the league, and I think that's gonna mess with Tua's head a little bit. I think it's gonna be a difficult day for him to move the ball. I'm gonna take the Rams winning this game 27-13. Nice. Now, with that, Spence, I want to thank you for giving us your time tonight. Please tell all the people where they can find you and what they have to look forward to when they do.
Hey, well, I am now a member of Buffalo Rumblings. I've recently transitioned there. I've been there now. My second episode came out today. So you can find the Code of Conduct every Tuesday on every platform, whether it be Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff you guys listen to. And then Sundays, Mookie Hawkins and myself, we have the Chop Up, where we go live at 7:15 p.m. just before the last game of the day, where we go over the reaction to the first game, to our game, and then we also go over whatever the coaches and the players' interviews were, because Mookie is actually in those conversations. So we touch on all of that stuff, and then we hopefully have good things to say looking forward to the next week. So yeah, you can find me Sunday with Mookie. You can find me Tuesdays. Buffalo Rumblings is where it's at, man. Thank you guys for having me. I always enjoy hanging with you, Clayton.
Yeah, man, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to this Sunday. You can find Spence here as well. It's going to be a busy night for you, man.
Oh, good. It's going to be fun.
Spence is going to be live with us 9 o'clock on Sunday with the post-game show. Now, Jeff Uvino, please tell the people where they can find you and what they have to look forward to when they do.
If you feel so inclined, you can find me on Twitter at RealJUVEINO. You can find me on Instagram at JeffUVEINO, with the plethora of Western New York high school pro sports stuff coming from me, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, always the best.
And St. Bonaventure Athletics, of course.
Oh yeah, gotta rep the Bonnies, Jeff. Gotta rep the Bonnies. And be sure to follow the Cold Front Report on Twitter, Instagram, and like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's at Cold Front Report on Twitter, Cold Front Report _ Bills News on Instagram, Cold Front Report : Buffalo Bills News on Facebook, and Cold Front Report on YouTube. Be sure to like the Overtime Podcast Facebook page. I understand we've streamed live on here just today. And hey, we have plenty of excellent content coming out on the Cold Front Report webpage. So be sure to go check that out. And if you'd like to find me, I'm on Twitter at CFR, CLAYTON, at CFR Clayton on Twitter, and on Instagram, it's the same exact handle. You'll find plenty of the same content that you'll find on the Overtime Podcast Facebook page at CFR Clayton. Thank you all for tuning in. Spence, thanks again for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love working with you, man. I'm looking forward to this Sunday. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy. And this has been the Overtime Podcast presented by the Cold Front Report.
Peace.